Hey everybody, what's going on? Dace here and welcome back. It's been a little over a month since I reviewed the Mayflash F700, and despite having not put many videos out lately, I have been busy testing two other controllers over the last few weeks, the ones you see right here. So today we're checking out the G16 and S16 by Haute42, or Haute42, however you want to say it. These units are wired all-button controllers, or leverless as they're sometimes called, and run on the multi-platform ultra-low latency GP2040 CE firmware. Part of what I want to do today is zero in on a couple of things that had these ABCs stand out to me compared to much of the competition. But first, let's cover the basics for each. Just to keep things transparent, Haute42 did send me both of these, though they never said what they would like to see from me. All things expressed in this video are my thoughts entirely, so just keep that in mind. With that out of the way, let's get right into the G16 first and what comes with it. So we'll set this guy back here. So right out of the box, we get our controller, a 58-inch USB cable, anti-slip pads for putting on the bottom, of course, two 6mm like spare keycaps or whatever, like button covers, and then a switch puller, which is a great little tool to have included. I think that's a nice touch. And then, of course, we have an extra Leobog Greywood V4 switch and the manual, which we're going to talk about this separately because, yeah, there's actually something I want to say about that. But yeah, I'll just do like a bit of a close-up if that helps. So yeah, all sorts of great stuff that comes with this. Really impressed with just like things out of the box. It was awesome. While you aren't seeing how things were packaged for the shipping, it's one of the most secure packages I've ever received. First, it was like this plastic wrap, like durable sort of envelope bag thing that I'm sure we're all familiar with from like Amazon packages and whatnot. And then inside there were two bubble mailers, and in each of those came like one of these boxes, so like a box for each controller. This was like the G16 box, and then the the S16 box as well, size comparison there. And then inside of these two boxes were, of course, like the components that you get with it, and then each of the controllers one is in its own bubble mailer as well. So just super secure. Super impressed with all of that. It was just awesome. So one thing I love about this is you don't end up with boxes that look and feel dirty or are covered in shipping labels, stains, scuffs, or writing. Like when I got my Snackbox Micro back in 2022, I don't even want to like get into what's all over that thing. It's just not good. But here you always have a pristine, clean box, and it's great. The controller is essentially a circuit board sandwiched between thick acrylic layers with a 16-button layout, a turbo button at the top left corner, and 4 menu-related buttons along the top right. So you have start, back, home, minus, / capture right there. While the upper layer of acrylic is completely clear, the bottom layer has this frosty appearance that looks really nice with the underside glow of the RGB lighting, which also has various configurations and customization options. So I'll plug it in so you can see what that's like. You're not really going to see that too well because I got like the actual lights on and everything. That's like that, and then the front side goes through like this slight shift. Maybe at some point in the video I'll like throw in some like ooh in the dark with the lights just so you can get an idea for what it's like, but it's really nice. We have an EXT port on the top right side and 2 USB-C ports, one on the top left side and the other just left of the top midsection right there. The G16 weighs 465 grams and is 196 millimeters across, 125 millimeters from top to bottom, and is 16 millimeters thick. I'm not sure how well that's going to focus right there, but it's a beast. So here's the Switch Pro controller for just like comparative purposes so that you can like see. So it's a pretty compact controller, pretty tiny guy, but it's awesome. I love it. The keycaps are smooth plastic with almost a microscopic texture to them. It's really nice. And the switches are all hot swappable. The shifting colors and white accents when pressing buttons are always a plus, since I often do play in the dark, like early morning or at night or whatever. So just again, like with the light, you're probably not going to see too much, but when you press a color, it goes to white and it will just stay like that. And so it's pretty awesome. I'm really loving the colors. It's not always like mandatory, of course, but it's just a plus when it comes with the RGB lighting. Like a standard 12-button layout, we have our 4 directionals, and then our 8 action buttons right there. However, on the G16 we have 4 extra buttons, the M1 and M2 custom keys, and the LS and RS, or L3 and R3. We also have LEDs for the power and turbo, plus this small OLED screen that reads your inputs. Above the input reader it shows what system mode you're in and which SOCD cleaning mode is currently active. The G16 is compatible with Windows 10 or higher, Steam Deck, PS3 and PS4, Nintendo Switch, Raspberry Pi, Mister, Android, Linux, iPadOS, and macOS. You can technically use it for PS5, but you need a pass-through device like the Magic Boots V1.1 or even the PXN N5, so you do have some options there. Another thing to be aware of is that if you're connecting to PS4 or PS5, the controller will be disconnected after about 8 minutes from what I've researched. You can work around this by uploading the verification files that Haute42 provides. So there's a bit to iron out with that, but that's just how it goes for those systems specifically. This controller offers X input mode, switch mode, PS3/D-pad mode, PS4 mode, and keyboard mode, and it's easy to select the mode you want. Each system has a designated button you hold down while plugging in the controller. So for Nintendo Switch, I hold down A, which is right here, when connecting it to the dock. If you don't recall which button to press, you can look at the bottom of the controller because it's all mentioned right here. Additional special features of the G16 include multiple SOCD cleaning modes, built-in embedded web configuration, and an overclocked polling rate for less than 1 millisecond of input latency, according to their website. In terms of performance, the G16 is very satisfying to play on, and I have not encountered a single issue these last few weeks. It's a super compact build with absolutely solid construction, and despite the size, has some weight to it. Like, there's definitely heft there if you're into that sort of thing, which I totally am. So let's talk about the manual for a minute. We'll just set this out of the way. The reason I want to talk about this is because this manual is a breath of fresh air. Most of this, depending on like the zoom in or like the lack of, rather, you're not going to make much sense of it. But what I want to do is compare this manual from Haute42 with the one that I got with the Snackbox Micro. And I call it a manual, but it was more or less just like the only piece of paper that came with it. So it's not like it's their official manual, but there's the difference. So because I'm only on Switch, this was the only relevant image right here. So we're just going to quickly go over everything else that this includes, and it's just crazy. I'm not going to like go over everything in like super detail or anything, but you have your list of compatibility, your input mode, tips for that, PS4 mode, gives you the rundown of what I mentioned with the verification process and all that kind of stuff. And then of course your key value tables, which is just like great if you need to like just quickly glance and get some info. Your D-pad modes, like what to do for each one, like D-pad, emulate left analog, emulate right analog, etc. Your invert D-pad Y-axis info, your SOCD modes, that's super, super awesome to have right here. So if you, for whatever reason, want to switch between like up priority or neutral or last input priority, whatever the case is, that's all right here. Easy to do, easy to find because it's just actually included. And then, of course, your web configuration info is like right there, turbo stuff, and then your RGB LED settings for like next animation, previous, brighten up, brighten down, parameters, like all that kind of stuff. And then if you do have technical issues, you can contact them there. So all in all, and there's nothing on the back, that's all. But this is epic because, and I would love to see other companies match this kind of quality because this is like the holy grail of manuals. Yeah, like, and sure, like maybe junk food now includes more with their products. I have no idea. I might as well bring this back into view. I'm not planning on buying another controller for them because they are like very expensive for what you get, in my opinion. And it's not just junk food or custom arcades. Like, to be fair, I'm just zeroing in on them because I have the Micro. So of course I'm going to start seeing things through a comparative lens. It's still a functional controller that does what you need. And if it was the only one I ever had, then great, I'm set. But let's get into the main talking point of this video, which is the pricing of the Haute42's 42 controllers and how they are just blowing other companies out of the water in terms of how they offer super budget-friendly options. It's like, it's just preposterous when you look at some of the totals. And I get sure there are some like premium ones where it's like got all these components or like wicked like build design and like that kind of stuff. But let's take a closer look. Actually, before we get into that, I will say that I feel that's part of why many players who want to transition to an all-button controller, or at least branch out from stick, if they're going to still use stick or pad or whatever, they don't end up pulling the trigger, because in many cases it means dumping your wallet, just like opening it and dumping it out entirely. So I can totally understand why a lot of people just hold off, because most of the time controllers like this are just like the prices are through the roof. So anyway, let's look at some prices. Even though I didn't end up paying for these, I was 100% going to buy multiple controllers because the prices are extremely inexpensive and the feedback on build quality and everything else was off the charts. And to be honest, this is what immediately drew me in when I stumbled upon Haute42. Hearing that they had controllers that were like 50, 60, 80 bucks, whatever, was mind-blowing to me with what I paid. And we're going to get into that like right now. So the G16 is normally 87 Canadian or 65 USD. The wild thing is it's currently on sale for 62 Canadian or 46 USD. That is a complete bargain, okay? And we'll talk about the S16 too for just a minute here. This one is normally 150 Canadian or 112 USD, but is on sale for 51% off, putting it at 74 Canadian dollars or 55 US dollars. That is absolutely ridiculous to me. What gets me is that their M16, which has an aluminum alloy shell, is still only 155 Canadian or 115 USD. And if you look at this thing, your first thought, like if you've seen the Razer Kitsune, for instance, it's kind of like, it kind of resembles that. It has that same kind of like look and feel. I'm sure there are differences, like for sure, but that's just kind of like what it brings to mind right away. So like a very, very budget friendly price for even something that is probably one of their like top tier models. So with the prices of the G16 and the S16 up here established, let's compare that to what I paid for the Micro in 2022. I spent 282 USD on the Snackbox Micro Art Case Edition, which was 380 Canadian. With customs, not that that has anything to do with junk food, but it's still an expense I had to pay. The grand total to get the Micro into my hands was 440 Canadian dollars, almost half a grand. At the time, I had no clue whether this was reasonable or overpriced. I knew it was expensive for sure. All button controllers were completely new to me, and surely there were fewer companies making these things back in 2022 compared to how many have popped up recently. They do technically offer cheaper options like the Micro Lite, but that's still over 200 Canadian plus shipping and then customs if that crops up again. So you get an idea of the massive gap between the prices these companies offer for their controllers. One of the things I love about GP2040 CE is that it opens the doors for loads of other people to get in there, make controllers, and in many situations offer prices that are actually reasonable for people. Now let's look at the S16. Since both are very similar, I'll only zero in on what sets this one apart from the G16 unit, and we'll just go from there. Despite sharing the same dimensions across and from top to bottom, the S16 is only 12.5 millimeters thick. It comes with Kailh red low-profile mechanical switches that contribute to a more slim feel in addition to the decreased thickness. So as you can see here, if we compare the two, yeah, please excuse the scratching, like it's just bare surface. So you can see those come up quite a bit. And then how's best to do this? Yeah, it's just like way slimmer. It might not look like much here, but when you look at these in person, it's like, wow, these ones sit high and these ones are like nice and like low riding. That said, with the decreased thickness, that does not in any way compromise how sturdy the build quality is, and it still has a nice weight to it at 373 grams. We have a single jump button, about 28 millimeters, and the remaining keycaps are 24 millimeters. The turbo button has a slightly different position, and instead of having both power and turbo LEDs, we have a single LED for turbo. And lastly, the OLED screen now sits below the down and left directionals instead of above. In terms of how it plays, the slightly wider buttons on the S16 give it a more well-rounded look and feel, but I love both controllers the way they are. I just bring this up since some players may lean more heavily toward one than the other. Again, I didn't experience any issues while using this on Nintendo Switch, and I think the slim and compact design of the S16 is an excellent alternative if you're not sold on the G series models. To wrap this up, I am completely impressed with these controllers. They raise the bar where quality and cost are concerned, don't take up a lot of desk space, function great, and come with epic manuals, so there's really nothing to complain about here. So I suppose one question to kind of just ask for like whoever's listening is like, who is this for? Like, if you're considering one, like maybe you're getting your first all-button controller, you likely won't want to spend hundreds of dollars right out of the gate if you're not sure yet. With how inexpensive these ones are, it makes it very easy to test the waters without breaking the bank, and that's something I can really get behind. The G16 and S16 are also great for those who just want something small and compact with impeccable quality. I'd love to hear what you guys think though. Have you ever considered using an all-button controller? If so, what kind draws you in the most? Leave all that in the comments. I cannot thank Haute42 enough for providing me with an opportunity to review their controllers, and I would love to check out some of their others in the near future. A huge thanks to everyone who stuck around until the end, everyone who likes, subscribes, comments, or shows their support in other ways. I really appreciate it. With that, have a stellar one, and we'll see you next time.